About a month ago now, Ben Shapiro was on Jordan Peterson's podcast, I think it was, but anyhow, it's on YouTube, where they were talking about, what was it, religious beliefs and the Enlightenment? Now, the only reason that I brought that up is because that's what I'm going to be talking about for the entirety of this video, so I hope you're interested. Now, I didn't sit through the entirety of the podcast or episode or whatever I should call it, and that's mostly because it's not the sort of thing that I would normally spend my time watching, but I am going to skip to the end of it, where they start talking about morality, where I feel like I have something to say.
Institutions tend to be successful when people teach their kids the right things.
Well, that's also part of the reason that I made the argument constantly to Harris and to other atheists that I've talked to, that they're Judeo-Christian whether they know it or not.
Right.
And the reason for that is that all of their embodied actions presuppose the Judeo-Christian ethic. The only thing that isn't religious about them is their articulated post-Enlightenment rational representation of the world.
Well, there are a couple other things about us atheists that aren't particularly religious, like the fact that we don't usually go to church, the fact that we don't believe in a God, and us skeptically minded atheists, these Enlightenment types that they'll go on to talk about, we don't subscribe to a dogma either. But our actions presuppose a Judeo-Christian ethic? No, I don't think so. In fact, I personally am morally closer to a Hindu or a Buddhist than I am to a Christian, because I am mostly vegan and largely against the death penalty, which falls in line with those sort of Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist concepts of ahimsa, or nonviolence, whereas the Bible actively encourages you to eat meat and stone certain people. In fact, that brings up a good point, because in order for me to really respond to what he just said there, we need to have a good definition of what exactly this Judeo-Christian ethic is. And that's no easy task, because this Judeo-Christian ethic has changed several times. For example, in the Torah, and presumably the start of Judaism, it was seen as unethical to say, eat pork, wear clothes woven of more than one type of material, to get a tattoo, to trim your beard, or to work on the Sabbath. And in the New Testament, Jesus pretty much changed all of that. So whether you think it's okay to get a tattoo, to eat pork, or to work on the Sabbath or not, your stance on the matter is technically Judeo-Christian. The Old Testament calls for the death penalty, right? But in the New Testament, Jesus criticizes it. So whether you're for or against the death penalty, your stance on the matter is technically Judeo-Christian. And the same thing goes for divorce. Not only that, but these Judeo-Christian values have actually changed between the early church and today. Take, for example, slavery. The Bible actually supports slavery, okay? I can hear the apologists now saying that the Bible says you should treat slaves and servants, you should treat them well. It says that about Hebrew slaves, but slaves from foreign nations were slaves for life, and you could beat them as much as you want as long as they weren't killed by it. And the New Testament does not condemn it. In fact, I believe Jesus himself told slaves to obey their masters, even if they were strict and, well, abusive. Now, something must have happened between then and now, because now it seems that pretty much everyone in the US, Christian or not, is against slavery. So this means one of two things. One, that this ambiguous label of Judeo-Christian values or Judeo-Christian ethic can change and has changed between times and cultures, people and places. Or two, your views on slavery are not based on religion and as such are not Judeo-Christian.
And I do think you see that in Harris quite frequently, because he does believe in evil. He does believe in good. He believes that the proper way of proceeding in the world is to move from evil towards good.
Even on the notion of objective truth. So Sam, it's kind of weird. So you and Sam and I would say that I'm, as a religious person, more closely aligned with Sam's vision of what objective truth is than your sort of American pragmatist Peirce version of what objective truth is. And with that said, I don't know where Sam is getting his version, right? I'm getting my version from the idea that God created an objective truth that the mind of man can ferret out from time to time. And Sam's version is what? I see evolutionarily beneficial stuff happening, right? That if you come up with an idea that makes your species more likely to predominate, then you hold by that. But that doesn't make it objectively true. It makes it objectively useful, which is a different thing.
Now, here they are talking specifically about Sam Harris's view of objective morality. And quite frankly, I disagree with Sam Harris on this matter, and it seems like most atheists do as well. I also find it really difficult to follow Harris's train of thought on this matter to see exactly what sort of objective morality he believes in. I mean, I personally I don't believe that morality is, in essence, objective. I believe that morality is subjective, although individual people or perhaps groups could have a more objective basis in their idea of morality.
I also don't see how it's a straightforward matter to get from reliance on evolutionary biology, say, as your fundamental way of orienting yourself with regards to reality in the world, and something like the primacy of rationality and the ability to extract out from that rationality something approximating a universal morality. I can't see these three things fitting together at all.
I'd actually agree to this. It doesn't seem like morality is universal at all. The very fact that we disagree, not only in the US, but around the world on the topics of abortion, death penalty, and gay marriage, that shows that morality is just not universal. And I don't know if these guys are presupposing an objective morality, but for those that do, it's very evident that morality is not universal. So I don't see how it could also be objective. But yeah, as you can see, morality definitely does vary from culture to culture or even person to person.
And so what seems to be the case is that there is a necessary set of underlying axioms, and I do believe they're coded properly in the Judeo-Christian ethic, that if you then act upon rationally, you get something approximating whatever progress we've managed to make. And I think that progress is substantive.
Right. That's why we've abolished slavery in 1865, despite resistance from Bible thumpers, or why gay marriage was finally allowed everywhere in the US in 2015, despite resistance from Bible thumpers. Because of this constantly developing sense of morality that we have, we've seen over time a more and more caring society, better and better treatment to and from others, and more equal rights. This is a good thing. This doesn't get accomplished by sticking to the rules of a much older generation, like we're Amish or Mormon. Why do we act like American society is or should be based entirely on the societies of ancient Israel or ancient Rome?
You start by treating the text with a certain amount of reverence, and you with a certain amount of ignorance, right? There's something here that you don't understand, and you should probably assume that it's worthwhile because it's being kept, rather than to leap to the proposition that you in your ignorance can clearly see why it's unnecessary.
Okay, calling it ignorance is a step too far. I am perfectly aware of what the text says and why it's important to people. I don't know why I'm acting like they're talking about me specifically, but this is how I feel right now, okay? I think it's about the sincerity, right? Because many devout believers will take what the Bible says and try to apply it directly to their lives, to their thoughts, their opinions, their politics, without giving it much of a second thought. Because they're treating it as incontrovertible for its sanctity. I still think, and I think you should think, that we can still judge the Bible from external means, from extrinsic means, whichever one is more correct here. Even if that means that we call some of it wrong or some of it bad, even in places where you have televangelists and the like doing insane mental gymnastics to try to deny it or to justify it. Take the aforementioned slavery in the Bible, for example. I think it's a good example for many things. The difference between me and a fundamentalist Christian or an evangelist or whoever, besides the fact that I don't believe in God in the first place, is that I can accept and I can point out the fact that the Bible does indeed support slavery, and that in the Bible, non-Hebrew slaves didn't have to be treated well or fairly, and that this is a bad thing, and that as a society, we've moved on from that. No televangelist is going to accept all of what I just said. We don't have to stick to our guns on this matter, and we can indeed move forward as a society. And maybe, just maybe, that can apply to other principles in the Bible as well, such as how the Bible is against homosexuality.
The saddest part of this is that the greatest impact in terms of throwing away the stories of our heritage, basically, is that impact is generally not going to be felt in the urban centers with people who go to Sam's lectures or listen to his podcast. Those people have a worldview that they have shaped by listening to stuff like Sam's or Steven Pinker's or Richard Dawkins. And that worldview, while I think it may not be fully coherent, it coheres for them. But the problem is that you apply that to people whose main draw to morality is not going to come from listening to these particular sources. The people who get their social fabric from churches in the middle of the country in the United States, the people who have built a social fabric along with their neighbors because they have a commonly oriented goal, and then you take that away from them and you offer them, go find your own purpose, good luck with that.
I grew up with two separate sides of my family. My mom's side of the family was pretty Catholic. My dad's side of the family was pretty fundamentalist. And I think, especially, over time, I've really come to more thoroughly understand how much tradition plays a role in all of this. And not only that, but as Shapiro said, this sort of social fabric that it weaves or causes. When people all agree to go to the same place at the same time in a friendly manner, all for the same purpose or goal, perhaps, I can definitely see how that very well may enrich people's lives. I also don't know why exactly church is the only way we can get this sort of social fabric. I mean, you'd be able to get a sort of social fabric by joining a group of people that have the same hobby, the same profession, or just even within your own family. Families can just hang out. Just imagine, for instance, that everyone in your city or town or community, they decided to go to a public park just one time each week, all at the same time, just hang out and do whatever it is you do at a public park. You become a much stronger, close-knit community, right? Now, I'm not trying to say that we should replace church with something else, or that we should abolish going to church. I'm just saying that some of us are just taking it too seriously. Now, Ben Shapiro says, or at least implies, that the atheist draw to morality comes from people like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. And this is wrong. My sense of morality, my draw to morality, comes from the fact that I'm just all around a decent human being. Like everyone else, I naturally, instinctively, and intuitively don't want to harm anyone because I'm empathetic and sympathetic. And I also, I want to fit in with the community around me. I want to be respectful of others, and I want to help others. Because again, I have empathy. I'm not so terrible a person that I need to have this looming threat of eternal damnation in order to be empathetic.
You can tear apart my religious tradition, and you can probably do so in an entertaining way. I mean, you do, obviously. And then how are you going to build? What exactly are you building?
Yeah.
And I can do the same thing to your worldview, but then what am I building?
Well, here's the thing. The way we think, feel, and behave is not caused by religion. At least not as much as religion is the result of the way humans naturally think, feel, and behave as humans, even without the concept of religion or even without any language. We have natural instincts to empathize, sympathize, socialize, fit well within our society, to chastise others for bad behavior that you don't agree with, and to create coping mechanisms for stress. And what religion does is it simply appeals to these natural instincts that you have to do all these things. And it appeals to your natural instincts very, very well. Now, all of those things, all of those behaviors that I just mentioned, we observe them in atheists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, neo-pagans, and even non-human apes and other animals as well. Apes will indeed form groups, they will socialize, they will help each other out by, sharing resources and protecting the group, and they will indeed create this sort of social fabric, and all presumably without the looming threat of burning alive eternally by a higher power. So I think it's fair to say that these things can indeed come instinctively. Yeah, they come instinctively and intuitively to us social animals. To be clear, I'm not trying to completely abolish religion in the United States, nor am I trying to completely demolish your traditional Christian values, except maybe the hateful and dangerous ones. But I would rather them be seen as descriptive rather than prescriptive. God will always be important to most Americans, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. But I don't think that our society and culture and politics are or should be based entirely on the society and culture and politics of different societies and cultures and governments from thousands of years ago.